Well, guys, normality has been restored. The Toronto Maple Leafs have been eliminated from the playoffs. It might not be the first round this year, but they will not move on any further. The Florida Panthers defeat the Toronto Maple Leafs in 5 games. Now, this series was extremely tight for pretty much every single game. Like, there was not a single game that Toronto were not in. However, they just could not get it done. They could not get the goal at the right time when they needed it this series. And because of that, congratulations, Toronto fans. You made it out the first round, but you do not make it any further. And you allow the Florida Panthers to move on to the Eastern Conference final. It's incredible. To be honest, like you had Toronto fans after they won their series, the first series in 19 years. They were screaming, "Give us Florida, give us Florida." Well, you got Florida, and this is what happens. Maybe you should have preferred Boston. You could have potentially buried two demons this year instead of creating new ones. Um, look, it's devastating for Toronto and Toronto fans, I think. Um, the fact that they've gone out in the playoffs, they finally probably had some glimpse of hope. Got out of the first round. We're coming up against Florida, who really only just scraped into the playoffs. You know, this is all leaning to an Eastern Conference final, potentially even a Stanley Cup berth. But it just didn't pan out that way. They just didn't have the players step up and be game winners like Florida. Florida just had, I think, as a team, they were there. They had the ability to grab the lead and hold on to it. Um, and in those overtime games in game three and game five, ultimately, they had those players that just could put the could bury the puck in the back of the net when they needed it most. Um, and Toronto just didn't have any of that this series. They got, game four. But outside of that, I just think they were tight games. They were in every game, but they just struggled to have that potent finish that we know they have. I know Bobrovsky, stood on his head a little bit in this series, and he's probably back to, you know, showing why he got that $10 million contract. But yeah, for the firepower Toronto has, I was just disappointed that with all of it, they couldn't find at least one or two players to just give them the goals they need and provide that potent finish when they needed it most. And it really let them down in the series. Um, but I'll swap over to Jaden to take you through some stats and his thoughts on the series.
Yeah, interesting series. Obviously a very close series. It could have gone either way in a sense, but for what Toronto did during the trade deadline and all of those big trades and new assets they brought in, and all they did was buy an extra 2 wins in the playoffs. It's kind of a whoop-de-doo in a sense. With him out there forking out on their core players and all the trades they did, there's really no excuses um, for this team to be bailing out. And look, contract issues are going to have to come up because a few contracts come up next year. I know Matthews and Nylander have come out and said they like it there and they're looking to resign. I know Matthews wants to resign during this off season. Um, whether they get that done or not is up to you or up to him. But and that's also if Jubas gets re-signed. But Matthews only scoring 2 assists in this little series. It's just not good enough. I think the core only scored like 3 goals in this series, which was 2 from Nylander and 1 from Mana. And honestly, Nylander's been my favorite, best player for Toronto. I know Mana's been amazing as well, but honestly, Nylander just the way he enters the zone, it allows Toronto to add some offense immediately, and I feel like he's their best carrier into the zone. On regards to Florida, you got Bobrovsky. Obviously, had an amazing return, and it's glad to see. He's finally doing it. Kachuk's having an amazing series. We all thought he would be that type of player because he is that physical player, and he's really showing that he is that. The whole Flames Florida trade. You can see that Florida is probably out there winning it at the moment. That's for sure. And then you've got other people like Verhage, you got Brandon Montour, like they're all playing really good. On regards to power plays, it was pretty much even 27-25, and penalty kill both not the greatest. So there wasn't too much in regards to the special teams there, but just not enough from the core from Toronto, and just not enough in regards to their depth as well. I just think too much money forked out on those front four. One of them has to go, in my opinion. But they probably won't do it again, and it'll be more mediocre for them going forward.
Yeah, I think having that much money wrapped up in your, you know, top four forwards, and then if you add Riley um on the defense to that, you've literally got, well, I think it's 40 mil just with the four forwards, and then you've got 7.5 with Morgan Riley. So you've got 47.5 mil wrapped up in five players. Ideally I do think losing a Austin Matthews, John Tavares, or a Mitchell Marner contract would help this side phenomenally because it just frees up so much cap space. Like, that $11 million contract from one of them can flow down into three point something billion-dollar contracts for three other reasonably good depth forwards. Um, and that's one of the things that they lack sometimes. If this potent forward, top six isn't firing, what do they have outside of that? You mentioned the acquisitions at the trade deadline, Ryan O'Reilly and so forth. Yeah, that was great, but it's led to nothing. Essentially, they've given away a lot. They finally won a series in first one in 19 years or something, and that's fantastic. But ultimately, it you're still kicked out in the second round. So it's cool, you broke that curse, that's fine, but it led to nothing else. So yeah, unless Austin Matthews is planning on taking a pay cut and signing his next contract for 9 mil or whatever, I just I'm struggling to see re-signing Austin Matthews how that's going to help them going forward because the rumor had it that he was looking for 15 mil. You sign this bloke for 15 mil, Toronto aren't winning a cup ever. Like,
Well, yeah, especially with
yeah,
the showing that
I
he hasn't really shown up in the playoffs. Like I know he was their leading goal scorer, but like for 15 mil for what he did in the playoffs, like 11 points in 11 games, like a point per game. Like Kachuk's doing better than that, and he's definitely not getting 15 mil. So no,
no,
you definitely
exactly.
mortgage a future. If he gets, I think 11 mil plus, I think they won't do anything further because I think 11 mil plus is kind of ludicrous for a contract for these star players. Honestly, you can maybe afford
Yeah.
one. They've got three. The other thing, like all their players are UFAs basically. Not all ending this season, but I think it's only like Matthew Nees that isn't RFA, but his doesn't expire for 3 years. So this team could look a whole lot different.
Hmm.
They got to fix their depth. Their depth's just not good enough, and yeah, like Florida just exploited that really. They played hard and they got through that depth. They shut down their forward line in regards to their core. And if you shut that down, there's really nothing, no other scoring that's going to come your way. And yeah, like Florida played to that strength.
Florida have been an absolute pleasure to watch in this playoff series from a team that we were saying probably aren't going to make the playoffs. To be putting up this type of performance is just phenomenal. To knock out Boston and then Toronto is, yeah, it's credit where credit's due. They're playing some incredible hockey at the moment. They deserve to move on to the Eastern Conference Final. Um, and honestly, if they went on to make the Stanley Cup final or even win the Stanley Cup final, I wouldn't be angry. Um, I it's tough considering, you look at it and go, well, such a bad home and away season team that then go on to win the playoffs. Well, it just shows you that as long as you make the playoffs, it doesn't really matter how your home and away season went. You just have to show up in playoffs. You have to bring it come playoff time. And, Toronto have been really good home and away season for a number of years. And yet they struggle to get out the first round. The one year they do, they get it kicked out in the second. So, yeah, sometimes it's not all about what you do in the home and away season. It comes down to, if you turn up in the playoffs or not. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's credit where credit's due. Florida, fantastic performances. If you're a Florida fan, you should be getting excited because you're, you know, even if you don't make it past the next round against the Canes, you've been gifted an absolute pleasure to watch this playoff series. And I think you will still get a fantastic series, win or lose, against Carolina Hurricanes from the Florida Panthers. I think they will put in everything they've got. And even if they lose, it'll still be a fantastic series.
Mm, yeah. I guess my last thing is, seeing Bobrovsky doing so good. And I wonder what's going through Spencer Knight's thoughts. Yeah, obviously on the sidelines, due to other reasons. And now you're looking at this team possibly going to the cup, and this is the year that you took a break off. It must hurt a little bit at least to see this run
Yeah, for
going.
sure.
But that's
Be
all I've
disappointing
got
for him.
there. Yeah, definitely be disappointing. Um,
That's it from me.
yeah, that's it from me. Toronto doing Toronto things, Florida doing amazing things, keeping this run going. Loving the way they're playing. Very hard hockey. Um, but yeah, leave a comment below what you thought of this series. What you think Toronto need to do to fix their issues for the future playoffs. Um, if you think Florida can get it one up over the Canes, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more playoff and just NHL content in general. And until the next video, we'll catch you later, guys.
Take care, guys.